off the back of Archetypes, with the Spotify deal collapsing in quite a dramatic way a couple of years ago, do we think that Meghan is going to manage to push through with this podcast? Do you think that this will be her big podcast comeback, or do you think she's failed to land the plane?
I think this isn't going to be her big podcast comeback, but it could be a necessary step on the way for her to realise that she has to push herself harder and do more. I think there's a bit of complacency that's creeping into the Sussex camp, where they went in all guns blazing, largely pointed at the monarchy. They did the whole royal bombshells thing. Ultimately, it destroyed their reputation, so they had to stop. They then stopped and realised they had to do something that was more comfortable, and they wound up with something very vanilla. So they've done incredibly dramatic but toxic. Now they're doing boring but safe, and they need to find a way, but also a motivation to push themselves into more daring television or podcasts that isn't a fight with the monarchy. And they need something to drive them there. And so I think Meghan has to go through this phase of things that don't quite land in order to summon from within herself the motivation to leave the house and not just monetize her own life, because I think that's basically what she's doing. She's trying to monetize her, like she's got a little home farm which she's using to cook, to make crudité boards for the kids, and someone's turned around and said, "Oh, this is so wonderful, you make the best crudité boards." And she's like, "I'm gonna make it into a TV show." Yeah. It's like, you can't do that. Like, you know, your life, your millionaire lifestyle is not interesting enough to people who are struggling for you to just monetize your own life. You have to push it. You have to leave the house. You have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And what I actually think she should do is sit across the table from people who disagree with her, because no royal family member has ever done that. It's never happened. And if Harry and Meghan, I mean, you know, they will come up against, like Harry will come up against his temper, because he's got a real temper, and he will get angry with people who, you know, if he sits across from Conservatives, from Republicans, he will have to manage his temper. And Meghan will have to really get to know a subject very well, and she'll have to force herself to get to know the subject inside out in order to do it. But they have to stop just having love-ins with their friends. Like, it's so boring, and they can do better. Like, Meghan honestly can do better, and she just needs to aim higher. But in order to aim higher, she needs the motivation. She needs to feel the hunger, and there's just no hunger with them.
And I think she needs to be comfortable with controversy. I think she's so scared of saying the wrong thing, which is interesting, because she's become such a subject of controversy. I mean, the term Megxit is because of her. I will say, though, there was a piece by Trevor Phillips in The Times where he said, you know, Meghan and Harry leaving the royal family was a huge missed opportunity, because, you know, she could have been the face of a campaign to address the issue of skin bleaching and colorism in parts of South Asia and mainly sub-Saharan Africa, where women are using these toxic chemicals, often cancer-causing chemicals, to try and lighten their skin. And this whole idea of, you know, wanting to be lighter and beauty standards and all of that. These are things that she didn't really need to do much, just being the face of it and highlighting those issues, which I know would have been very significant for me, especially growing up where I did. But she's not, I don't know if she's not cerebral enough to take these on, or daring enough. I mean, these are things that people would really appreciate, because she is a celebrity. She's always going to have media outlets following her wherever she goes, but she can do something with that other than vacuous, empty, boring things like selling jam or having interviews with basically her friends that don't really add any value to anyone's lives. And I think that's something that they should really be comfortable with pushing. I mean, I think for Harry, one of the things that he was really saved by being part of the firm was the fact that his face was what sold anything that he did. So with his Sentebale charity, when he started it, everyone was like, this is great, he's doing this in honor of his mother and all of that. In the time since, and obviously with this drama with Sentebale, the fact that it's been revealed that he hadn't even been to sub-Saharan Africa, to Lesotho in 5 years, and this charity that he started, it was quite shocking, particularly to me, because I think, oh, so you're one of those people that starts something, puts your name on it, gets a few rich friends, and then basically ignores it and lets the little, you know, people in Lesotho and Botswana run it. And then somehow you have this clash with a chairwoman who seems to be doing things, at least. And for me, it was a very bad look. And I just thought, you're not a royal anymore. You can't just do that. You can't just attach your face to things and expect it to blow up and you're like, oh, I've done a good deed. You actually have to put in the work. If you run a charity somewhere, you should at least make that charity part of your work. You should be there regularly, every few months at least, have regular correspondence. And this kind of management from afar doesn't really work, especially because he doesn't know how to manage. His life has been managed for him. He's always had these courtiers doing everything. So these are the things I think they should really consider doing and taking seriously if they have any hope of redemption.
That's a very interesting point. And before we move on from Meghan's podcast and also Harry, This has been such an interesting week with schedules. We've obviously had this state visit from the King and Queen to Italy, which has been in the diary for a long time. We have had Harry's court case this week, and then at the exact same time, Meghan's podcast was released. What do we make of this scheduling clash?
I think it's fascinating because I think the biggest competition is actually between Meghan's podcast and Harry's court case. I think that is what was competing against itself. And I cannot get my head around it because Harry can't move the court case and it's been in the diary for months. You know, I've known about it for months. But there's nothing he can do to shift the release to the timing of the court case. But Meghan was absolutely in control of the timing of the podcast. And I cannot get my head around why they would want those two things to be in competition with one another. And the weird thing about it is that Harry's court case won. And the reason why, fundamentally, the court case is the most interesting thing to the UK audience. And so maybe Meghan thought, oh, who cares? I don't care about the UK audience anyway. You know, she doesn't ship internationally from her lifestyle brand. But the American media basically ignored Meghan's podcast, which was fascinating. The only big US outlet that really did much on it was New York Times, which is bizarre because they're usually the ones that ignore everything royal. But actually, there weren't loads of reviews in other US outlets, which was fascinating to me. And it will be interesting to see over time whether that reflects, you know, a US audience that's done that kind of hating on the Netflix show, now just losing interest, you know, because you can get a hate audience for a while, but probably not in the long term. People get bored of the hate.
Yeah.
So I think it was a massive misfire from them.
Do you think it was deliberate though? It sounds like, I mean, the fact that Harry, again, as we talked about, Harry came here, so of course that made the story even bigger, especially globally, because you have the images of him here and we had the security incident. And then of Meghan, you know, premiering or debuting her podcast, the first episode. What do you think their actual thinking was in terms of those being at the same time? Do you think it was, we're going to try to drown out one with the other, or?
I think that the only thing I can imagine is maybe Lemonada Media had a schedule. But she is such a big fish in a small pond at Lemonada, which is the podcast production company, that you would think that she could ask to be moved a week. I mean, she wouldn't even need to be moved. You know, she could be moved 2 days, one day,
even a day. That's what I find so interesting about the clash.
It's baffling to me.
It just there's so many mistakes that the couple have made that makes it so much clearer that they're not part of the royal machine. I mean, these are the kinds of mistakes that just wouldn't happen if they were part of the firm. Everything is like a well-oiled machine. And now because they're very impulsive and emotional and kind of like to do things off the cuff. And I think they think part of their authenticity or appeal comes from just not being as polished or trying to not seem as polished. They end up making mistakes that they don't really need to. I mean, this is their fourth failed thing. The Polo series was just boring and actually came across quite privileged and entitled, which I don't think was what they were going for. You know, her last podcast was a flop. This is her series on Netflix, which I had to pain through, was just good. When Harry chewed through his leash enough to make an appearance on screen, I felt like, oh my God, he's alive. He managed to claw his way out of the basement. And then this episode, well, he didn't give an interview, and because he wanted to step back and not steal her spotlight. And then this now podcast that I had to sit through, I'm sad. I just feel like it's a wasted opportunity time and time again, and I don't know why they don't get it.